Well, welcome back, everybody. Some political news this morning. 4 states, of course, went to the polls yesterday for their primaries. Voters and political professionals now wondering whether Democrats can hold on to control of the House and maintain its, of course, very precarious margin there in the Senate as the GOP launches an aggressive campaign to flip a whole lot of seats nationwide.
One of North Dakota's Senate seats is seen as up for grabs from the November general election. Democrat Katarina Christensen won her primary battle and will now face incumbent Republican John Hoeven, who was endorsed by former President Trump, is setting up another big race for a Trump-endorsed candidate. In South Carolina, the voters have chosen their nominees for governor.
Former Democratic Congressman Joe Cunningham won that party's nomination for governor, defeating Mia McLeod. Cunningham will now go up against Trump-endorsed incumbent Governor Henry McMaster, who's also in the middle of the abortion debate as we await the Roe v. Wade decision. And just as a reminder, the Supreme Court expected to release some decisions. We don't know which ones, but that Roe decision, could come as early as today. To be clear, last year McMaster signed the fetal heartbeat bill into law, which bans most abortions after a fetal heartbeat has been detected. That's typically around 6 weeks, making it one of the most restrictive anti-abortion laws in America.
And joining us to add insight to the latest primary results is Michael Traugott, professor of the Center for Political Studies at the University of Michigan. Professor, thank you so much for joining us. A lot to unpack here because we're obviously looking at Trump's influence on the Republican Party. I want to talk first about the South Carolina 7th House District incumbent Tom Rice, who voted to impeach Trump, lost to a Trump-backed opponent, Russell Fry. And then, of course, there's the House District 1 incumbent Mace, who also criticized the former president after the insurrection and fended off Trump-endorsed candidates. What made the difference in those races?
Well, I think in both races, actually, it was a pretty good night or day for Donald Trump. Katie Arrington is a relatively weak candidate. She had run for this office before and lost to a Democrat. With the Trump endorsement, she got back in the race. She actually got within 8 percentage points of an incumbent, Nancy Mace. So we often count the results as win or lose, the most important feature. This was a relatively good showing. And then, of course, in the race involving Tom Rice, Russell Fry beat him by around 27 percentage points. That was a very good showing for the Trump-endorsed candidate.
And, of course, it's not just about the endorsement from the former president. It's also about the Republican candidates who embrace this false theory that he had the election stolen from him. We're seeing this time and time again. In fact, there is a Washington Post analysis saying that more than 100 GOP primary winners back Trump's fraud claims. That was before yesterday's primaries. What does that tell you about the current state of the GOP and Trump's influence?
Well, Donald Trump is obviously the greatest force currently in the Republican Party. He exerts a great deal of influence over candidate selection. The candidates line up to get his endorsement. I would say one of the most interesting races yesterday was the Secretary of State's race in Nevada. It was won by Jim Machar, who was endorsed by Donald Trump. He's an election denier. One of these people, one of the 100 people that are referred to in the Washington Post article.
What makes that race stand out to you so much?
Well, Nevada is becoming an increasingly competitive state. It involves a lot of different factors, including how strong the support of Hispanics remains for the Democrats. And so having somebody who is the chief election administration official of the state who talks about stolen elections is very troublesome with regard to the counting of the votes in 2024.
I want to focus now on the Supreme Court. The Roe versus Wade decision could be handed down really any day, possibly even today. What will the Roe decision have, if it's overturned, as those leaked documents indicate, what will it have on the fall elections? What type of impact?
Well, I must say that it's very difficult to judge for the following reason. In the 2014 midterms, the 2018 midterms, we had a tremendous mobilization of the Democrats, a group that were called Never Trumpers. And I think that the Roe decision is going to mobilize the Democrats. On the other hand, I believe that the Republicans are very energized. The polls are showing greater enthusiasm among Republicans and Democrats. And the notion of taking over some or all of the Congress, either one or both chambers, will be a big mobilization factor for them. So I think historically, Roe is going to result in historically high turnout in the midterm election.
Do you look, if you're looking into your crystal ball, and all predictions are that the Democrats are going to face a rough midterm elections, whether it's if the Roe decision doesn't get their voters out, there's the issues of inflation, President Biden's handling of that issue. He's not receiving the best marks on it, as well as the ongoing war in Ukraine. The inflation issue hitting the pockets of Americans. Where do you see Democrats standing after the midterms?
Well, we have to make a distinction between the House and the Senate. In House terms, historically, the party of the president does poorly in the midterm off-year elections. And the only time that the president's party did well was in 2002, after September 11th. But beyond the historical record, inflation, as you indicated, is a very important issue. Joe Biden's approval ratings are historically low, and the problems that Joe Biden has to deal with, like inflation, the price of gasoline, are not really soluble in the remaining months before the election. So I think there could be a very large gain among the Republicans in the House. The Senate is a different issue because, of course, they have these statewide contests with very visible candidates, and there are some issues about the selection of Republican senatorial candidates. I mean, if you think about people like Herschel Walker in Alabama or Mehmet Oz in Pennsylvania, states where they might have ordinarily had a chance are now at least in doubt. In Georgia, there's a Democratic incumbent. It's an open race in Pennsylvania. So the prospects of, in this 50-50 Senate, of Republicans taking over, I think, are diminished a little bit given these other factors.
Right. And just one clarification, Herschel Walker in Georgia, not Alabama, but I'm sure that's what you meant.
Sorry, yes.
That's right. Quite all right. Michael Traugott, professor of the Center for Political Studies at the University of Michigan. Thank you so much for your time and your insight. We appreciate it.
Good to be with you, Jay.